When you hear the name Jack the Ripper, you probably picture a shadowy figure in the London fog, right? But the real story here isn't just about a string of unsolved crimes. Nope, it's about how a real-world killer was twisted into a global legend, and what that whole transformation tells us about ourselves.
I mean, think about it. It's a name that everybody knows even over a century later. So, why? Why does this one series of brutal murders from 1888 still have such a powerful grip on our collective imagination? Well, as we're about to see, the answer is this fascinating mix of timing, media, and of course, mystery.
So, first off, we have to get one thing straight. The Ripper legend wasn't some inevitable thing. It was created. It was born from a perfect storm of very specific factors that turned a local crime spree into an absolute international obsession. Yeah, think of it literally like a perfect storm. At that exact moment in history, you have this explosion of newspapers, all reaching a newly literate public that was hungry for stories. You add in a city completely paralyzed by genuine fear, and then you top it all off with the most compelling hook of all, a mystery with no solution. This was the fertile ground where the Ripper legend just took root.
To really get this story, though, we need to peel back all that myth and look at the grim reality of the time and the place where these crimes actually happened, Whitechapel, London, in 1888.
The legend gives us this romantic, almost gothic image, a shadowy phantom. But the reality? Oh man, it was a district of incredible hardship. We're talking about a place where people were crammed into lodging houses, where just surviving was a daily struggle. This was no movie set. It was a place of real, raw human suffering.
And at the absolute heart of this reality were the victims. These were women on the very fringes of society, often forced into sex work just to survive, and they were basically invisible to the wider world. The tragic irony here is that the same society that ignored them in life became completely captivated by their deaths. Their humanity just got swallowed by the spectacle.
So, this whole environment set the stage perfectly for these crimes to become a public spectacle. The media frenzy didn't just appear out of nowhere. It was ignited by a series of terrifying events that unfolded in real time, right on the front pages of every newspaper. Get this, the 5 canonical victims, as we now call them, were all killed in just 10 weeks. 10 weeks! The murders got more and more brutal, suggesting a killer who was getting bolder. This just poured gasoline on the public panic. At one point, 2 women were killed on the very same night. Can you even imagine the terror that must have ripped through that city?
But it only took one single thing to launch this murderer from being just a local menace into an international media sensation, a household name. It was this, a signature on a letter sent to a London news agency. Jack the Ripper. Whether the killer actually wrote it or not almost doesn't matter. With those 3 words, a person became a persona. The name was catchy, it was menacing, and it gave this faceless terror an identity the public could grab onto.
Those letters turned the whole investigation into a kind of public performance. It wasn't just a police matter anymore. Suddenly, everyone felt like they were involved, speculating, guessing, and helping to build the myth. This was one of the first times a criminal's identity was basically crowdsourced by the media. Okay, so the fact that the killer was never caught, that created a vacuum. A big, empty space. And into that void, people poured all of their deepest anxieties and fears about the changing world around them. And right here, this is the secret to the Ripper's staying power. If the killer had been caught, the story would have an ending. It'd be just another closed case file. But because he wasn't, the story has no conclusion. It can be retold and reinterpreted forever. The mystery is the engine of the legend. So who did people think he was? Well, the theories tell you a lot more about the society than they do about any actual suspect. Was he a doctor with surgical knowledge? That spoke to a fear of modern science. A member of the upper class preying on the poor? That's all about class anxiety. Every single theory was a projection of what Victorian society was truly afraid of.
And this all leads us to the Ripper's true legacy. It's not just a collection of cold cases. It's basically the blueprint for how we consume true crime today.
The parallels are they're striking. The sensational newspaper articles of 1888, they are the direct ancestors of today's true crime podcasts. The gossip that spread like wildfire through London, that's now viral social media theories. The dynamic is exactly the same, only the technology has changed. But the impact was also very real and very tangible. The failure to catch the Ripper forced police departments to modernize. It showed the desperate need for forensic science, and it kicked off a debate about media ethics, about that line between informing the public and creating a spectacle, a debate we are absolutely still having today. It basically created the template for the celebrity criminal.
But we can't forget the profound human cost in all of this. In that mad rush to sell papers and tell a spooky story, the victims, Marianne, Annie, Elizabeth, Catherine, and Mary Jane, were reduced to props in their own tragic stories. Their complex lives became just footnotes to the legend of the man who ended them.
Ultimately, that's what Jack the Ripper became. He became a mirror, a blank screen that we project our own fears onto, our fears of the unknown, our fascination with the dark side of human nature, and our endless desire to fill a silence with a story.
And that leaves us with a really critical question to think about, especially in our own age of constant media. When we turn our attention to these stories, are we preserving the memory of the victims? Or are we just contributing to the spectacle, feeding the very same machine that started cranking way back in 1888?
The Ripper case is still officially unsolved. The evidence trail went cold more than a century ago. And what this story ultimately reminds us is that while every crime leaves behind some kind of evidence, not all of that evidence, especially the kind that builds a legend, is telling the truth.